Let me tell you something. So for the last 2 days off and on, 3 days off and on, right? I've been trying to figure out, or I've been doing research on the history of Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. Now I'm not done my research. I still got to look up, after the transition, Robert Mugabe, who had passed away in his 90s. And, I'm going to, do some more research about, okay, so why did Zimbabwe fail? And it was something with like they still had sanctions on them even after this transition from white to black. But anyway, the reason why all this came up is because, of the Buffalo shooting, right? And the similarity between that and what happened at the AME church. And I was, just YouTubing, and I came across uh, the AME church with that whole Dylon roof situation. And I was watching a video, and they were talking about how he had this Rhodesian flag and how the white supremacists, they, you know, just kind of, coalesce around this Rhodesian flag. And I was like, you know what? I was like, I don't really know much about Rhodesia, right? I was like, that was way before my time, right? What's so crazy is Dylan Roof, he was like, what, like in his like early 20s. So I'm like, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, I'm older than you. I don't know what's going on with Rhodesia and whatnot. And I'm like, you're too young to even have like been around for that to happen, because obviously he's younger than me. So I'm like, so what is it that you're getting out of this Rhodesia thing? And what I discover is it's pretty much the same thing that the white supremacists do with the Viking culture, right? Where like all the white supremacists want to be Vikings now, right? And I think there's two parts to that. I think there's the idea of the purity of Vikings. Like, I guess you can't get any whiter than a Scandinavian Viking. And then also the aspects of hypermasculinity, but the white version of it, right? Because we already have gangsters and street culture and everything due to prolonged exposure to poverty, right? So we black Americans already operate outside the box, and especially in a world that is basically trying to sissify and wussify men across the board from all walks of life. You have, white men seeking out, their version of the, hyper masculinity, right? Because black men already have their version of hyper masculinity, but white men don't, right? And with all this talk of LGBT and men need to be more sensitive, and, just women in general, Western women talking out of both sides of their face, a lot of these white men are gravitating towards the whole Viking thing. So in diving into the research of Rhodesia, I'm like, okay, this is some other thing that they, this fantasy world. A lot of what I notice about a lot of like these white nationalists and white supremacists and stuff like that, they paint like this warped, twisted, like fantasy world about how white people operate and how white people really get down, and they manipulate and twist their own history, right? Let them tell it. Everything that they do is benevolent, right? They're blessing the Negroes with their wisdom and their knowledge, right? They ignore the fact that, Europeans within Europe, before anybody else came in there, were slaughtering the hell out of each other. Like Europeans are like the Klingons of planet Earth. You know what I mean? They're the savages. They run around. They sharpen their teeth in Europe, killing each other with Mosin Nagants and shit like that, running at each other on battlefields. They sharpen their teeth with that. Damn near all of the torture inventions that you can possibly think of, not one of them are African. They're European. We must break him on the wheel. We must quarter him. You know what I'm saying? Like, we must put him in the bronze bull. Like all these things are European ways of torture, not execution, torture. You see, or torture before execution. But yet, like white people, they come and they try to paint themselves as, oh, we're civilized, we are the face of civilization, and we bring, knowledge and wisdom, and everybody else should model themselves after us, right? That's what they do. But like I said, I call out the lie of that because when you look at even the movies that the white people depict, right? Even like you look at the Beatles, right? The Beatles, they went to some spiritual journey in India, right? They do this in their movies, like I've said before, Last Samurai, Dances with Wolves, Avatar, Enemy Mine, where they have these movies where the white man, he's the evil white man, he switches sides, or gets captured or something like that. Discovers the beauty of the non-white people culture, right? I mean, Avatar, all the aliens, the Navi, they looked like black people and Native Americans. It was like a combination of the both of the cultures that they tried to depict, right? Which is also black. Like minority people should be offended about that because it's like it's kind of highlighting the alienness to white people of these non-white cultures, right? So the Navi, they're aliens, so they gotta have dreadlocks and they gotta have thick lips, right? And they gotta wear face paint and war paint and all this other so they gotta live off the land and nature and whatnot, right? But then there's this romanticized aspect that they depict in these movies to where it's like, oh, those people are spiritual, they're more in tune with nature, and Europeans and their industriousness has caused them to, move away from that, right? And I feel like the Vikings kind of provide this weird happy medium because the Vikings have a lot of myth and lore, and like you saw that lady that was on was it American, top model, or not America's top model, America's what do you call that show with the singing and all that shit. What is that show called? I forget what it's called, but you know what I'm talking about. That she was like up there singing Viking shit. It'll come up on your like TikTok and your Instagram every once in a while. She's up there, trying to sound like a Native American and shit. I'm saying, yeah, they got all that. They got all that because remember, the whole thing with the Council of Nicaea and all that shit, and Constantine and them wanting to take over, the pagans, and they incorporated a lot of pagan shit into Christianity. The wreath is pagan, the Christmas tree is pagan, the winter solstice and equinox, where freaking Christmas and Easter were moved, pagan, right? Having to do with the movement of the sun, right? So they moved all that around. So it could be argued that some of the Scandinavians, as white people, were more spiritual than what white people have become today with the industries and all that shit. But they depict that in their movies, that they somehow feel that they're out of touch with nature, and that all other minority groups are somehow in touch with nature and the universe and the cosmos, which I don't like, because then you end up with this situation where because that's how it's depicted, people kind of like take their lane, where white people see themselves as industrious, right? Which like they already are. And then black people will double down on being magical and spiritual. Right. And so like we don't ever get to be industrious. We don't ever get to compete economically. We're just, oh, let me put my dreadlocks in this tree because this whole planet acts like a brain. Like, like black people already get magical with this. So like where white people may feel some type of way, or overwhelmed by the Western civilization that they've created, they put out these movies, and then like black people will sit there and look at those movies and adopt some of that identity, which I think it works against where we're trying to get as black people. We do need to be more innovative and industrious and all that stuff. All right, but then you end up with being industrialized is Eurocentric, like, and then you get into those sort of thought loops where somehow not having anything and not being industrious is Afrocentric, and then being industrious is Eurocentric. And then, like, I'm like, well, you're not going to compete because, again, capitalism, money, medium of exchanges and everything. How do you participate in that system of, economy if you're so magical and spiritual that you fail to compete? Right. But anyway, that's one angle that my brain is going and when looking at this whole situation. But anyway, getting back to the whole thing with, you know, Rhodesia, right? So I'm watching these documentaries, these interviews, and I can't say that it's all white people because, obviously they didn't support Rhodesia for whatever reason. You know what I mean? The international community, this is in the 70s, obviously was after African Americans had their very public, you know, civil rights movement. This is after Malcolm X. This is after Martin Luther King. This is after, what's his name? I'm going blank. Hold on. James Baldwin, went to Oxford and gave his debates, right? Because I think that, the thing with white people is they want to be on top. They want to be number one. They want to be in the dominant position, right? But the morality aspect, it kind of fucks with them. And they go to great lengths and mental gymnastics to try to rationalize, with religion and Christianity and the Bible, to try to rationalize them basically oppressing other people. And they try to they want to be like, well, we're making the world a better place, but we're still going to be on top. Right. Well, I mean, look, they have hospitals now and they have schools now and they're being educated. Right. Right. And they throw up all this shit. It's almost like it's like a guy who's like cheating on his girl, cheating on his wife. And he's trying to find ways of trying to justify it. Well, I provide for her and I do this and I do that. And isn't that good enough? And that's what they do. But he's still going to go out there and continue to cheat. Some people argue, you're a Messiah. You're a what would they say? That's misandry for you even using that example. Flip the genders. I don't care. I'm just saying, it's you're doing fucked up shit and you're trying to find ways to justify and rationalize. And that's what I saw with a lot of these Rhodesians that they were doing interviews with. There's a lot of rationalization, justification, and they do the same thing, here in the States. Whenever you talk about Baltimore or talk about Detroit or talk about Chicago, right? Black people moved there during the Great Migration because there were jobs and economic opportunities there. And then those economic opportunities dried up. They disappeared because America went through deindustrialization, because Apple, I know Apple wasn't there back then, but I'm saying all these companies said, hey, we can go and make these products cheaper in China. Right, which is why China is the factory of the world. Even at the beginning of COVID, the hospitals, they were bitching because they couldn't get masks. Well, guess where all the masks came from? China. You know what I'm saying? All your electronics come from Shenzhen in China. How they don't come from Detroit. Right? And in Detroit, what did they do? What did the auto industry do? Did the auto industry disappear? Did General Motors and Ford and all these companies stop making cars? No, they're still making cars today. They just don't make them in Detroit. They make them in Windsor, the Chrysler plant that actually they just closed down recently in Windsor. And those people are like, what are we gonna do? That's white people in Windsor, because ain't nobody in Windsor but white folks. What are we going to do? And literally, Windsor is literally, you can see Windsor from fucking Detroit. It's like literally across the water. So it's like, so you're moving the plant over there for what reason? Because it's cheaper to manufacture the cars over there. We can sell them for a greater profit. Moo ha 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 ha. That's capitalism. See, white people love capitalism until it works against them. When you can have corporations that go out here and seek out, the highest, the cheapest way to manufacture a product to get the highest rate of return. That's all good. It's all capitalism when it affects, minorities and black people. But when it affects white people, then all of a sudden we need regulations and shit. But, they either moved it to Windsor Or they moved it down south. You got a bunch of plants down there in Tennessee and Kentucky and stuff like, yeah, because the land is cheaper. The local government's giving incentives. They can pay the employees substantially less than what they were paying the employees in Detroit. Substantially less. You see, and so, you get all this talk about, oh, black people, they took over the city's 80% black or 70% black. Yeah, that's because all the white people freaking left, who could leave, and they took the jobs with them, or they went where the elite white men moved the fucking jobs. But the black people, they were there and they were stuck there on their upside down houses and upside down mortgages. That's why you got Devil's Night in Detroit. That was brought up in Eminem's 8th Mile with, the houses that, that the girl got sexually assaulted in, or they were crack houses or drug houses. And they have a scene in the movie where they burn one of the houses down, that was already abandoned. But there was, I mean, you can look it up. I mean, when the city was initially in its decline, because Detroit did not become a majority black city until 1980. Okay, but when the city was initially in decline and people were upside down on their houses, they would burn their houses down and then collect the insurance money. That way they could get their money out of the house instead of losing. If you buy a house for, a freaking $100,000 and then the house is only worth $50,000 when you get it appraised, you done lost $50,000. So why not just burn it and collect the insurance money? You know what I'm saying? Instead of doing all that crap with closing out and everything else like that. So you have even less money. But, I noticed like on all these threads, and now it's funny because I was just watching a video from Visual Politics about Baltimore. And I'll give them credit. They covered a lot of the bases. At the end of the day, if you don't have industries there, you do not have a tax base. And without a tax base, you can't pay for institutions, you can't pay for services, none of that. And then when you want to talk about, the homes, right? I was watching this other clip. I'm jumping around a bit, but somebody sent me another clip of this. It was the turning point. It was this, I don't know who it is, some white guy. He's up there talking about gun violence and gun control. And he brings up the exact same numbers that I brought up, right? That 67% of all gun deaths are suicides in America. It's really only 8,000 to 11,000 that are actually homicides. So the liberals, they throw in the suicide numbers to try to pad the numbers, which is how they get to like, there's 33,000 deaths a year, blah, 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 blah. No, 67% is suicides. And again, the media is not, when do you see on the 6 o'clock news, they're like, oh, and this person killed themselves in Montana, and this person blew their head off in this area, and blah, blah, blah. Where do you see that on the news? You don't see that on the news. They don't give a shit about suicides, but they'll bring up suicides to pad the numbers and make you think that every year, it's 30 or 33,000 people that are dying, from homicides, when that's not the case. 67% of gun deaths are suicides, and 8 to 11,000 is homicides, and 85% of that, he said 80%, but I'll just go with 85, is black on black inner city violence, narco economy, gang related violence. And what he did in the video, and I'll play the clip, but what he did in the video is he goes, and see, well, you see the liberals, they want to ban guns to address a much greater issue, which is the culture. And I was like, I know he's going to leave it at that. I know he's going to say the culture, because this is what white people love to do. They love to sit there and say, oh, well, it's just black culture. Not that it's prolonged exposure to poverty due to the system that the system of white supremacy set up, with the redlining and the blockbusting and the freaking eminent domain and the urban renewal and the dumping of narcotics in the black community with, freaking Ronald Reagan and the Iran Contras and J. Edgar Hoover with COINTELPRO. Like I said before, you look at all the black leaders, go and watch any speech from Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, Martin Luther King. It's all personal responsibility. That's the funny thing when the conservatives want to jump up and talk about that. It's all about we want to be able to have our own shit and our own space and handle our own business and not have to deal and interact with y'all. We don't like y'all just as much as y'all don't like us. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Malcolm X sat up there on that PBS special and said we need to separate. And you had Farmer up there talking about, no, we need to integrate and blah, 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 blah. Right? But Malcolm knew. He's like, these white folks are sociopathic. There is no being around them. You know, again, this goes back to that article, The Ghost of White People Past. It said shit was right in there. And that was about the Asian community. As soon as white people feel that they're not the majority or they're not in control, they start feeling some type of way. They start pivoting and moving because they don't want to dance to anybody else's song, but they expect everybody else to dance to their song. That is what white supremacy is. So, the other thing that the guy did in that whole, that gun interview thing or whatever, what he's speaking on Turning Point. So I'm like, okay, prolong, it's the culture. I'm like, so you're not going to tie it into economics. And it was Cap, when I sent Cap the video, he actually came back with a joke. He was like, what I started noticing? And I was like, what's that? He's like, man, it don't matter what party it is. These motherfuckers do not want to acknowledge that it comes down to the money. I was like, I know, right? So because at the end of the video, he was like, well, the reason why we have these mass shooters is because we don't have, what did he say? He said, fathers in the home, and we don't have, we've gotten away from our Judeo-Christian values. I'm like, oh, here we go with the magical bullshit. Right? First off, it's like, even with fathers in the home, I'm like, what is the point of fathers being in the home if you're not going to have the fathers be gainfully employed so that they can operate from a Judeo-Christian perspective? Because in the Judeo-Christian perspective, the man is the head of household. How can the man be head of household and be an effective leader of his household if he does not control the economic resources of that household because there are no economic opportunities in his environment? I don't care what color. I like how Cap says it. I don't care what your favorite color is. I don't care what race or what group you're talking about. If you got a bunch of unemployed and underemployed men, there goes the demise of your family, because women are not going to get with, follow, or submit to a man who can't fucking provide. Like Chris Rock said, only women, children, and dogs are loved unconditionally. Men are loved under the condition that they provide. And that's just what it is. So anytime somebody talks about families and the Judeo-Christian, whatever, if they not talking about money, I know they talking about bullshit. Because I'm like, you're not going to have intact families if you do not have men who are gainfully employed, full medical and dental. You know what I'm saying? They can afford to buy a home. And, again, if the woman so chooses to be a stay-at-home wife, that there's the possibility of her being a stay-at-home wife, or she can go and work a job that only supplements, the income. But he is the chief breadwinner, and he's making the primary, amount of, money and resources in order to sustain his family. That is where you're going to get strong male leadership from no other position. You know what I mean? This is where you get the broke dusties that jump up and they try to come out there like the Israelites and the Hoteps and the Nation of Islam cats that try to come out there with their holy book and talk about how they're going to lead because they're a man of God, but they ain't got a cent in their pocket. Y'all can talk about how much you love Malcolm X. Malcolm X died broke. As soon as he got kicked out of the Nation of Islam, that man had nothing. So anyway, getting back to the roots of the Rhodesia thing, it's the same shit. It's the same goddamn thing. I'm listening, I'm reading comments, I'm looking at videos that clearly people who are pro-Rhodesia and they're just mocking black people. Like in the comment sections, see, look in Africa and look what Robert Mugabe did and it's all fucked up and this was Africa's breadbasket and all this other shit, right? And what gets me is like, not only this sociopathic nature, the entitlement gets me, right? So like if I was to sit here and say that Europe is for Europeans, right? You got all these, white national groups in Europe and Poland and Ukraine and, Sweden and all these other places. Europe is for Europeans, right? Because they had this influx of immigrants, right? Typically from nations for a few that were former colonies or had some sort of intervention, or because white people's birth rates were low and the white oligarchs needed cheap labor, so they brought these people in to be cheap labor. But then the problem is that the children of those immigrants are not going to accept being marginalized. They can marginalize the parents because they're like, hey, I don't speak English. I only speak Afghan. Hey, I'll clean toilets for a living, and give my child a better future. But then when the better future doesn't come, I always feel like I hear shit through the walls. When a better future doesn't come, those kids get frustrated. And when those opportunities are not there, like I say all the time, again, I look at the Asian community in the UK, especially the Pakistanis and people running around calling them Pakis and all this other. We so don't have that in America. Pakistani community is no different than the Indian community. They tend to send their kids. They come here as merchants, and then they send their kids to medical school, and you're not going to see them be part of the prison industrial complex. But in the UK, you will. Same culture, right? White people always want to run around. Oh, it's the culture. It's the culture. They got the same damn culture. The difference is the difference in the opportunity in the UK versus the opportunity in America. It's a total difference, and so, what I notice is, like, it's like these people, they got brought there for cheap labor. The kids ain't tolerating it. There's no really way for them to be incorporated into the mainstream of society and live the same, economic lifestyles as your typical white middle class person. Because I think that's what most people, aspire to, and so they get frustrated or they get isolated, and then that's when you end up with the no-go zones, and you end up with people trying to operate on Sharia law and everything. When you exclude people from your system, talking to white people, they're going to create their own subculture within that system. In other words, the shit, like, and this is what pisses me off about white people. It just makes me want to put fucking just hands on these people that talk this bullshit. Because what they'll do is they set up this system that's clearly unequal, clearly unfair, and then you have people who adapt and adjust to the situation and the circumstances, and they create a subculture. And then what white people do is they come in and they blame the subculture for existing and say that the subculture is the nucleus of these problems and why those people can't advance, because, see, this is how they are. I'm like, no, they're like that because you excluded them from your system. It's the same thing that I said about the white people that jump up and they talk about, how, black people, you need to do this and do that and establish your own and everything. Right. So it's like, and then once you do it, then they start screaming reverse racism. Right. So if a black person creates his own space and says, well, we need to have our own, then the white people stupidly and intellectually dishonestly come in the room and act like, the black person is racist because they're a black identity extremist because they're excluding white people. No, they're doing the exact same thing that you did to them. And being included does not mean, oh, you can come into the stadium, but you got to sit way up there in the nosebleed section. That is not inclusion, but that's how white people want to say, oh, well, I mean, we let the Negroes into this space. Right. So the Scottish people, because that's mainly who a lot of these folks are, Scottish and British and all these people from the freaking the greater UK, the greater United Kingdom. So they went down there, into Rhodesia, right, where people were already living. And let me get back to my point, right? If Europe is for Europeans, is Africa not for Africans? Right? I mean, it's funny how, like, just thinking about the Second Amendment conversation that we're having. You got all these, white people, it is my God-given right. The Second Amendment is my God-given right. The Second Amendment says to the government that it cannot infringe on a right that is already God-given, right? This is what they'll say. Did not the Africans who were already there in Rhodesia, who were minding their business in Africa before the colonialists, the colonizers showed up, were they not, or should they not, did they not have a God-given right to the land that is indigenous to them? You know what I'm saying? I'm just listening to these, the Second Amendment. It's my God-given right as a white man. I'm like, okay, fine. I'm with you. It's a God-given right to self-defense. I'm with you. But somehow the Africans didn't have a God-given right to the land that they were indigenous to. Like, just imagine if a bunch of Africans moved to fucking, they came as colonizers to Germany, right? Where white people are already living, you know what I'm saying? Smashing glasses of Franciscaner together and shit like that, drinking and stuff. And then a bunch of Africans showed up, right? Said, okay, we're going to turn this into a big farm, right? Started farming the land, got the Europeans, paid them pennies on the dollar, right? All the black people, they living good. They over there living like Rick Ross in a mansion and shit like that, playing polo and all of the type of shit. Every house has an indoor basketball court, maybe not polo, indoor basketball court, whatever the hell you want to name. Black people over there balling. You know what I'm saying? Just living it up, everything. And the white people, they live in squalor, right? And what was I going to say about the black people, the white people? Well, white people living in squalor, and the black people are balling out of control. Like, and then black people we're going to change the name from Germany to Wakanda. Even though we already got a place that we originated from that's called Wakanda, we're going to call this New Wakanda. Right? And y'all should be good with this, right? Right? So the Germans, they already had their own society, their own culture, their own way of doing things. And then here comes the Wakandans. Look, we brought you spaceships and vibranium and shit. Aren't y'all? We brought you all this technology and stuff, even though you really still live in squalor and you can't afford it. You know what I mean? We're the ones flying around in the fucking, Wakandan spaceships. We're the ones, walking around with the vibranium that you must come to our Wakandan hospitals to get treated, with our vibranium treatments that, you don't have access to and whatnot unless you come to our facilities. But, you should be thankful that we are blessing you with, our wisdom, right? And that's literally what went on in Rhodesia. You know what I mean? Like, even the one dude, he's like, well, I don't think they should vote unless, they're educated. I just don't think ignorant. Basically, I don't think ignorant people, should be able to vote. Which, yeah, on face value, yeah, that does make a whole bunch of sense. It's one of the things with Socrates and why he, didn't like there to be an excess of democracy. Feeling that only the educated people or the learned people should be the ones that vote because they have actually, have critical thinking skills and can contemplate multiple facets of a situation before they cast a vote. Weighing out the pros and the cons and all that. Educated people, the idea is they can't do that, or they tend not to be able to do that, and they tend to focus more on demagoguery, which is, free candy, yeah, free candy, you know what I mean? Like, so you end up with somebody who just goes up there and says what everybody wants to hear and gets voted for, as opposed to there being some sort of thoughtful, pragmatic way of dealing with, problems. The only issue with that is that in other words, there was no mutual, it wasn't like, the Europeans came there and were like, oh, we will help teach you or facilitate the productivity, of this nation so that we can both benefit together. That's not how white people move. You see, and this is, you got to understand the superiority complex. I've said this before about this is why they make their alien movies the way that they do. This is why white people make the alien movies the way that they do. 9 times out of 10, when it comes to aliens in movies, right? What do the aliens do? They're more technologically advanced and they come to destroy, right? That's white people's biggest fear. But in those movies, that fear, they have that fear because of the shit they do. Because that's what they do when they go, oh, Native Americans, oh, crush them. This is our land. We're going to snatch it up full of resources. Oh, Africans, oh, this is our land. We're going to come in there and we're going to snatch it up full of resources and marginalize these people. So if there was an alien race that came here from Alpha Centauri, and came to, the Earth, that's the only context that they can think, oh shit, they got more than what we got. They got more knowledge and technology than we got. They must be coming here to conquer us. That is the context in which Europeans think. Now, arguably, some people could say, again, going back to the Iceman inheritance, harsher the climate, harsher the patriarchy, right? Harsher the competitiveness. The idea is that Africans and many other groups grew up in the Garden of Eden where they were just plucking fruits off of a tree, and the European didn't, right? Because they were in, a temperate climate that had seasons. So if they didn't prepare for the winter, you died. Where in Africa, it's wet season, dry season, wet season, dry season, right? Or you had other places where, you're running around in the rainforest or some shit like that, right? But there wasn't as great of a fluctuation in climate, right? That's one argument, right, to be made about, the pathology, of the European. But like, man, I mean, just watching the shit, it's like, I've always said it, like, it's like white people love to give black people the keys to a sinking ship. They scuttle the ship and then throw the keys at black people and then go, oh, see, look, the niggers, they sinking the ship, see? And that's what they're doing on these Rhodesian pages, these white people that love Rhodesia and shit like that. They're over, see, and Mugabe took over, and look at Africa now, and it was such a beautiful place. It was Rivendell in Lord of the Rings where the elves lived. It was just so beautiful, and then these black Africans took over. See, that's why you can't give niggas shit, because they'll fuck it up. They can't govern themselves, right? Even though they always go in there, put sanctions, there's no tax base, right? None of that shit, right? There is no mutual sharing of shit. Same thing they did to Haiti. They couldn't let Haiti be a successful slave revolt. They were like, fuck that. Embargo the shit out of Haiti. Don't trade with them, nothing. Leave them niggas on the island. How do you go from the wealthiest colony in the Western Hemisphere to the brokest in the Western Hemisphere? And then that created unbelievable problems, for black people, because when you have these Europeans that come in with this hierarchical system, and then black people fight to break away from that hierarchical system, right? How can black people then function in a hierarchical system which they associate with the way that the Europeans operate, which is a structure based on elitism and a structure based on, it's not even a meritocracy. It's just, we are white and we are better than you, and that's all that she wrote. Not saying that any of these white people don't have, any sort of skills, but it's knowledge that they obviously keep to themselves. But it makes it very difficult for black people to operate in a hierarchical structure, because we see it as very Eurocentric. So it's like every time white people dip out, black people almost immediately have to go into a dictatorship or communism. And it's not to say that Robert Mugabe doesn't have, some criticism. Now, like I said, I got to do some more research on Robert Mugabe, but I'm saying, like the one thing that I do not like, and the Ghanaian president is the only one to really call it out, the current president of Ghana, which is this whole aspect of how African leaders, them motherfuckers do not pass the torch. And we have the same problem in the African American community. Okay, nigga, you too goddamn old. Okay, motherfuckers in their 80s and their 90s, they just will not give up the leadership position. Why don't you put somebody who's more, vibrant, more virulent, you know what I'm saying? Somebody, again, like, these are supposed to be like your, what do you call them? Proteges. Like, these are supposed to be the people that you bring up. You develop them to be the next leader, the next young person. Say, hey, man, I'm passing the torch. I'm retiring. Okay, you run shit. I've taught you everything that you need to know. Go out there and get them. No. That's not what happens with African leadership. Niggas just want to just be old and think that they're going to fuck 20-something-year-olds until the day that they die. They don't pass it on the shit. And I'm saying, if you're going against groups that have sense enough to pass the torch when they realize, shit, I can't keep up with this anymore, you're going to lose. And this is where Africans just lose all the damn time. All these dictators, motherfuckers up there, he's 102 and shit. Like, the fuck? Nigga, step down. Put the freaking 45, 50-year-old motherfucker in there that's got some sort of vitality to him left. God damn it, man. And then you got to deal with all the fucking sanctions and shit. Europeans all mad. Oh, you're taking the land from the farmers. It's their land. You know what I'm saying? Like it's mind blowing. The entitlement. This is our land, and we're going to stay here until we die, and all this other shit. And I'm like, just imagine some black Africans in Germany renamed the motherfucker Wakanda, and literally up there talking about we're gonna stay here till we die because this is our land too, and all this other crap. And I'm saying, real talk, had the European been more amicable with the way that they were doing things, more fair and just, I don't know if amicable is the word, but more fair and just and everything. I'm saying it like nobody who was there in 1978 was there when nobody who was there when they originally came was still alive in 1978 or whatever. You know what I'm saying? The Europeans, they could have fixed this shit. No, but they want to hold on to power. They want to hold on to dominance. They want to keep making the type of money that they're making, instead of saying, hey, what way can we both benefit from this and make money? Okay, the tobacco industry is big. Okay, but I'm making this much money, and I'm going to continue to make this much money, and you all will continue to live in squalor. I'm like, I'm like, yeah, keep fucking around. Your ass is about to get fucked up. Keep fucking around. Your ass is about to get fucked up. You know what I mean? Like, ain't nobody gonna stand for that and tolerate that type of shit indefinitely. You know what I'm saying? And, man, I look at them. I'm like, you all are idiots, man. You all are fucking idiots when it comes to the shit. But again, hey, this is white supremacy. This is the psychopathic, sociopathic, way that they think and process shit. I mean, just reading the comments, man, the comments are just like, they're the typical snarky ass comments that you'll see on Fox News, that you'll see on police activity anytime the criminal is black. Look at these blacks. It's just what they do. That's why, again, more rationalization. That's why we need to rule. That's why we need to run shit, because we got to keep them in their place and keep them at bay and all this other bullshit. Right? I'll say it like this. White people are evil and black people are dumb. I'll say it straight like that, because there's a lot of stuff that black people do that I'm just like, okay, you see the white people doing all this evil ass shit, so why the fuck are you moving like this? Why aren't you smart enough to fucking counter this shit? The shit is blatant as day what they're doing. Right? We got no level of organization, self-hate issues, all this stuff. You see what the fuck is going down. You see what moves they're making. It's not rocket science. It's overly obvious what they're doing. They're mocking you in your face, and the only response you have is, we will get violent. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, there's a lot of steps. There's a lot of things that can take place before we just go off and get violent. There's a lot of ways in which black people could better work with each other that we don't. This is why, again, the Black Panthers were such a threat to J. Edgar Hoover and his FBI. But I mean, the sick ass pathology that these white folks have. That's why people, I get why Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam used to run around saying the white man is the devil. I get that shit. Watching these old ass clips, watching how white people process their shit. And to see, the whole thing is, when you see it, like, when you watch these videos, like, you see how they feel guilty as fuck. They know what they're doing is fucked up. You know what I mean? Like they know that what they're doing, like, yeah, technically speaking, it's fucked. That's why I as much of a fucking bitch ass as Richard Spencer is, I give him an ounce of credit, because he at least says it like he means it. You know what I'm saying? What did he say? We didn't win America. Or no, what did he say? He's like, We didn't colonize America. We conquered it. Something like that. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad you said it like that. See, now we don't have to piss shit and fart about what's really going on here. You know what I'm saying? But see, what the other white people want to do is they want to see it's a meritocracy, and see you Negroes just don't do. That's what the problem is. There's opportunities here. Look at the Asians. The Asians are doing quite fine, right? They'll throw that up, right? Even though we don't see Asians in leadership positions, right? Even though Asians are only 5% of the population, Asians don't have the same history as African Americans, having their culture, language, religious orientation, belief systems, hierarchies stripped from them like African Americans did. On top of the fact that they still retain their language and their culture in their own community. Nobody's running around saying to African Americans, speak English, speak English. Nobody's running around telling us to speak English. You know what I'm saying? We may be black and American, but we're not foreign. We don't get labeled foreign. That shit died a long time ago. That's the irony about, I'm like, the white people trying to stay in Africa, because the white people in America for a long time, they be like, go back to Africa, nigger. Go back to Africa. Okay, well, you take your ass back to Europe. And the white Africans, it's like an oxymoron, but the Europeans in Africa, you know what I mean? They need to take their ass back to Europe. You know what I'm saying? I mean, let's keep it a buck. Again, if Europe is for Europeans and Africa is for Africans, you see? And see what white people want to do, and this is what black people got to be mindful of, is they want you to fail. There's no better freaking fulfillment, no better joy to these type of white people than to watch black people fail, because they will be standing there going, see, we told you these Negroes can't govern themselves. We told you, look at them, they live in squalor. See, and Rhodesia was a beautiful place. Look at these old colored photos of the 1970s and how beautiful Salisbury was. Look how amazing it was, and look at it now, right? That's what they do, right? Ignoring so many freaking factors. Like I said, keys to a sinking ship, right? It's like I'm trying to think what it is. It's like somebody who, if I can't have it, I will destroy it on my way out. You know what I mean? And that's what white folks do. They're not gonna let you have shit and then throw it up in their face and be like, see, look, and we're doing it better than you do it. Hell no. That's what makes them evil. They're evil. And these are the people that you get your white Jesus and Christianity from. These are the people that sit there and you get your religious orientation from. They tell you about how you need to be well behaved and you need to have a sweet twinkle of Jesus in your eye and you should turn the other cheek and everything else. But while they're actively fucking you up, the first people that they send in to facilitate all this shit that went down in Rhodesia, who do you think they send in first? Who do they always send in first? The missionaries. Get you caught up on that white Jesus, and then they come in and they fuck you in the ass with no KY jelly. What don't y'all get about this shit? You know what I'm saying? Y'all running around, Jesus this and white Jesus that. Same with the Arabs. Niggas running around, these Arabized blacks. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. All this other shit. They come in there and then all they do is take from the continent, take resources. Oh, what you got? Oh, you got some cows. Oh, you got some free labor. Oh, you got some minerals, some resources, some gold. Oh, make sure I gotta get the little kids to go in there and fucking do shit. Get them to crawl around, to dig up some cobalt so we can have some cell phones in the first world while they're all fucked up in the third world. Oh, you got some diamonds. Oh, you got some platinum. Yeah, we need that too. Right? That's what the fuck they do. And black people it's like the whole continent is retarded. And I haven't seen any real adaptation to that reality. I see a lot of complaining. I see a lot of bitching. But I haven't seen any real adjustment to that reality. And don't get it twisted. Like, Europe has Africa by the balls. China has Africa by the balls. Y'all giving away so many land contracts and resources that get you all up in debt, and then you can't do shit about it. You got no standing armies, no real militaries and shit. You can't even handle a bunch of ragtag Boko Haram and shit like that. You can't handle Al-Shabaab. You know, I mean, the shit is just, it's totally fucked up. The level of incompetence. Yes, the European is in the background fucking your ass up. And now you got the Chinese coming in doing the same goddamn thing. You know, black people gotta get smarter. They gotta get wiser. They gotta recognize what's going on. You know, and then again, we got these fucking dictators that want to keep everybody ignorant so that they don't get challenged and shit. So everybody's in the dark. So if you have a whole population of people in the dark, that's why they get fucking exploited. That's why the Chinese come in there and they think they can do whatever they fucking want to do. I'm glad to see some of the Africans stood up for themselves when they saw these Chinese people just thinking they can do whatever, and they smacking them up and everything else, telling them to get the fuck on. You know, but the fact of the matter is you should have caught that shit a long time ago. You know, but like I said, I gotta finish doing the research on, you know, Mugabe and everything. But you know, and even these sorts of response, like the responses and shit like that. Yes, the European is far more industrious than the Negro. Far more industrious. You know, and the whole like, oh, we're just gonna take this shit over, like how Idi Amin kicked out all the Asians and shit, but you don't know how to run shit. You know that just the sanctions are coming. The hyperinflation is gonna come. The isolation, not having trade partners, all that shit is gonna come. You know, and it's fucked up because it's like you're not gonna be as productive as, like, in other words, they're not gonna let you get the freaking the house with all the furniture in it. Even if you get the house, you're gonna be left with a shell. They're gonna take everything that they feel they brought into the space out of the space, and then you're gonna be left with nothing. So you got to find a different way of going about how you're going to transition from one stage to the next stage. You cannot be bullshitting. You know, but again, when other people control the space and control the land and everything, how do you determine who controls the land? When everybody's poor, everybody's in poverty, everybody was nothing more than a worker bee to be exploited. You have no formal hierarchies in there yourself other than the people who spearhead the revolution. It's part of the reason why these black countries end up freaking suffering, because it's always some dictatorship, military person that takes over. They don't know what the fuck is going on. They don't understand politics. They don't understand, you know, how to run a government. They don't understand any of it. We were the revolution. You know what I mean? And then, you know, and that's another thing, like China backed, you know, Rhodesia. Like this is what I said about the whole, you know, America and the Second Amendment and fighting tyranny. There will always be another country in the background that is going, if there is a civil war actually breaks out, they will be in the background ready and willing to support the opposition. They did the same thing. Russia was in there giving the freaking Zapu. They were giving them weapons. China was in there giving them weapons because they wanted to turn Rhodesia, which became Zimbabwe, into a communist state. You know, all that proxy war shit, right? The Cuban Missile Crisis, fucking, you know, Vietnam, you know, and freaking, you know, North Korea, right? You know, that Che Guevara shit, all that shit, the Iran Contras, and fucking, you know, fighting the, what is that, the Batistas and all that shit, all that crap. The proxy, we must contain communism, we must contain the spread, right? All that NATO, all the shit you see now, NATO versus Russia and everything. China's trying to reevaluate because they don't know what the fuck to do. They like, bro, shit, Russia only got a fraction of our economy. They got their ass handed to them. You know, we're business partners with the U.S. You know, we want to take over Taiwan because we got to bring them in check. because we want to expand our empire, but then that's going to fuck with our money. What do we do? Don't know. Got to think about it. Well, for now, we'll just posture and saber rattle and shit like that. Like, shit is fucked up. But yeah, I mean, that's just, I mean, the pathological behavior of these Europeans in those Rhodesian clips, you can find them on my community tab. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, just listening to them, you know, like, and again, the ones that really feel guilty about the shit and they know what the deal is, you know what I mean? They were quiet. You know what I mean? But the ones that got that entitlement, you know what I mean? It's my land, it's my country, and I'm from here, and all this other bullshit. And again, you listen to these white nationalists today in Poland and in Ukraine and in other parts of Europe. What do they say? Europe is for Europeans. I'm like, hey, okay, I'm cool with that. But can I say Africa is for Africans? Right? Can I say that? And then you go and tell the Europeans in Africa that y'all need to come home? Nah, but they're not gonna do that. You see. You know, so man, it's like I'm telling you, like, you know, it just kills me because white people always want to, you know, they first off, they don't even want to fix any of the problems that they create. You know what I mean? Like they really don't want to fix it because it's going to cost resources. Like I said, you know, like with the Democrats and the Republicans, you start talking about money and gainful employment. Hell, they do this even to white people. That's the funny part. Like they're more inclined to make sure that other white people have resources. You know, they'll fold on white people. Like white people start bitching and shit. Like we got men with families. You know, like just like that was the NYC negotiations, the union negotiations that they had over the truck drivers. It's a black and white video from like the 1950s and 60s or something like that. That man sit up there, we have men with families. That shuts a lot of shit down. Not always, but it shuts a lot of shit down. They get that. But you start talking as a black man, you know, hey, we got families. You're like, what do you need that for? You don't need that. You know, where's your 400,000 home that you're living in? You know, $400,000 home that you're living in. You don't need that. You live in squalor. This is good enough for you. And then when the community's all fucking broken and shit, and you got young men out here robbing and stealing and killing and all this other shit, you know, but then they go, so you all can't control your own offspring. It's like, let me see you try to control your own offspring and control the white community on pennies on the dollar. Let me see you try to control the young white men in the white community when you have nothing to offer them, which is pretty much what you'll see when you go to the poorer areas, you know, of America. You know, you'll see white folks engaging in the narco economy, selling crystal meth and shit like that. You know, you'll see all that type of stuff when the opportunities aren't there. You know what I mean? You'll see some of the daughters. I've seen it more than once. These freaking, you know, rural white women who move to a big city and they come across a strapping brother that, you know, makes good money, and man, what can their father who lives in a trailer park say? You're getting over there with a nigger. It's like, Dad, he's got more than what you got. You see what I'm saying? Like, you're not going to be able to curb anything when you don't have shit to offer. When you got shit to offer and shit to actually that needs to be maintained, then you actually have, you know, shit that people will fight to preserve. But when you don't have shit to freaking pass on, ain't nobody fighting to preserve your dusty situation. Don't nobody care about that. And especially if they go and they look elsewhere and they see other people, you know, that actually have something to offer. Then they start just doing the calculation on a personal level. They're like, all right, man, okay, this white supremacy shit ain't working for me. I'm out. Like, it ain't working for me. You know what I mean? So they like, I'm moving to the big city, and whoever I find in the big city that wants to live life, you know, and be happy, I'm down with that. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, you know, and then you get the poor whites that, you know, they try to maintain that because they got an inferiority complex about where they are economically speaking, you know, on the totem pole, the hierarchy of white folks. And that's where you get these poor, have nothing in their bank account, rural white people that, you know, are part of the Klan and all that other shit. But I've definitely come across my fair share that ain't on that, especially when you dive into the way that black people are. We have like an open door policy, and as long as you a cool motherfucker and you down and you don't come with any racial shit, you can come into this space. Because I definitely know some white folks that are more comfortable around black folks than they are around white folks, because again, white people, they built that whole system of you must have resources and status and wealth, and if you don't have that, you ain't shit. You just as bad as the niggas. So there's that classism that's built into their system of racism. But what happens when you're white and you don't have those resources and you're poor? Then where do you fall? Where's your respectability politics then? You see, so it's not as cut and dry as just black and white and blah, all that crap. But I'm saying there's, it's still, I still look at white people like they're pathological. You know what I mean? Like, you got to stay strapped around these motherfuckers because they will try it. They will try it, and then they will try to justify it. I mean, I'll go through all sorts of intellectual gymnastics to justify. It's like going back to with You Heard Me First Time when she was acting, or Gotta Be Kidding Me when she was arguing with Soul and Black. You know what I mean? And I'm like, motherfucker, you do math when it comes to your own finances. Don't be sitting up in here and try to act like, again, comparing unlike terms. Now all of a sudden you can't do math. Like, fuck out of here. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just, man, it just watching these videos of Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. I remember I was looking for Rhodesia on a map. I was like, where's Rhodesia? I was looking for that bitch on a map. Like, where's Rhodesia? Rhodesia is not Rhodesia. It is Zimbabwe. And I mean, man, like, it's just, they fuck it up every time. They do the same shit every time, no matter where they go. They did that shit in Australia with the Aborigines and the rabbit-proof fence. They did the same thing in freaking Hawaii, with the Native Hawaiians. They did the same thing with the Native Americans, here in America. You know what I mean? They did the same thing with the Zulus. They did the same thing with the Khoisan. Right? I can't even do it properly, but that was my cheap attempt. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying they do the same thing over and over and over again. They did the same thing with the Chinese, with the what was that shit called? The freaking not the Opium Wars. What they have, the British Tea Trading Company did the same thing with India. They just did the same thing with Japan until they got kicked the fuck out. I mean they just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. And it's like, at what point can you acknowledge and say that this is a pathological behavior and have nobody argue with you? It's like, this is what they do. This is why white people get labeled with the names and the labels and everything else that they get hit with. This is why they get hit with that shit. But anyway, I'm pretty much done this video. That's all I got to say. I just needed to get this off my chest after watching those documentaries. I mean, they're only maybe 15 minutes a piece. It doesn't take long to get through them. Once you watch one, you kind of, I'm trying to get different perspectives. I could see the Rhodesian videos. There's a lot of Rhodesian videos that are very biased. They're very, very biased. Some of them border on, racist satire. They got one that's like a cartoon. You know what I mean? And the whole thing is just mocking black people. I mean, the whole entirely is just mocking black. I mean, you got to watch it. But anyway, that's all I got to say. That's my video. SWP out.